Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I am Rob, your host, and with me as always, or most always, Carter. How you doing, Carter?
Man, I'm doing great, particularly tonight.
What? You're off to a good start?
So far, so good. Yeah.
Only going to get better?
I think so, yeah.
This is a show I've been wanting to do for a while.
Yeah, same.
So I'm excited.
It's been a long
I didn't
time
want to
in the
speak for
making.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have two guys here who are joining us, Luis and Leo, who, can we call them our Four Roses experts? Are you guys okay? Are you comfortable with being...
I mean, I'd consider myself a novice.
Novice?
Just getting into it.
Just getting into
Yeah, that's it.
Dipping my toes into the water.
Yeah,
right,
I've seen the bottles we have here. I don't think so.
We'll ask Luis to kind of carry you along and help you out.
I'm used to
He's got a strong
around,
back.
so.
He's got a strong back.
You carry him around quite often?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a good friend like that.
Luis and Leo, thanks for coming on, man. You guys
dude.
are
Cheers.
big Four Roses guys. Been into it. I'll let you guys tell your stories of what got you into it, but I want to say that from my perspective, getting into it here in the Houston market and then kind of going to some other places, whether it be just for traveling for vacation or to see friends or back home, even to Kentucky for that matter, it didn't seem like other parts of the country have the craze that I see here in Houston for Four Roses. Am I missing something, or is that a fair assessment?
I would say that the following for Four Roses has increased exponentially in the last couple of years. So exposure regionally, Luis and I are friends with guys from California, Tennessee, up the West Coast a little bit further north, and it can be pretty hard to get a hold of private select releases now. They tend to sell out same day.
All over.
Yeah.
Okay.
All over.
All over.
Yeah, I mean, there was a pick, a Wyoming OBSV that sat around for the shelf. It was released in 2017. That sat around on the shelves for like 4 or 5 years. But once the bourbon craze hit Four Roses, I think they had like maybe 4 or 5 cases left. And as soon as the word spread that they had it, I think it sold out in like 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'd definitely say, just in my experience, when I first got into bourbon, whiskey, that kind of thing, Four Roses was a little bit easier to get in different areas, but it has definitely spread. Very desirable now.
You two guys, tell us a little bit about how you guys got into Four Roses. What was it what was your whiskey? Okay, you ready? Journey,
For me, it started off, I got into Four Roses because of value. Honestly, I got into bourbon a little bit late to the party, maybe around 2017. And by then, Buffalo Trace products were starting to be less readily available on the shelves. What got me into bourbon was Antique 107. It was something that I could reliably find on the shelves for like $23.99.
Yeah.
I thought it was killer. The 7-year age statement, 107 proof, like the perfect combination of value for me. But pretty soon after I got into bourbon, that became harder and harder to find. And obviously, BTAC at that point was a couple $100s. So for me, it was a little bit unapproachable to get into a new spirit category. I came from mezcal and tequila, which were way, way cheaper, especially at that time, which is creeping up now as well. And then a couple short months afterwards, I found Four Roses, and I was blown away by the value, by the quality, and it was still kind of slept on. I think at that time, the private select bottles were only about $50.
Yeah.
And they sat on the shelves for weeks. You could go to Specs and find almost any recipe.
Really?
At that time, like early 16 to 18, I feel like they were still pretty rarely available.
Wow, okay.
So some of the bottles that we picked up at that time at retail have blown up since then and are obviously unattainable. But for me, that's what got me into it. I was new to the category. I was looking for value in a place where people hadn't really discovered it yet. And one of the things that got me really excited about Four Roses was just the variety. You look at Buffalo Trace, they only have 2 mash bills. And then obviously they're weeded products. So there's only really 3 big flavor profiles that you're getting from them. Whereas with Four Roses, if I'm feeling something spicy, you got the K yeast strain. If you're looking for something a little bit sweeter and fruitier, you got the V or the O. So I love that there was a certain product for whatever I was feeling at the time.
So you only need one whiskey in your house. Four Roses covers all your.
That and Dusty's basically
That
cover
and
the
Dusty.
majority of everything that I need.
How about you, Leo? How did you get into whiskey and then Four Roses?
I mean, whiskey in general, I mean, I would say, like, going back to college, like, you know, tailgating for football games. I'd always reach for Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah.
You know, mixing it first and drinking it. So I think I had an appreciation for bourbon early on, and higher proof bourbon. And then with Four Roses, my first memory of Four Roses was visiting my grandmother back home in Gulf Shores, which Matt and I are from Alabama. And I went to an ABC store. It's state controlled. And they had a Four Roses pick sitting on the counter and or on the shelf. And I didn't know anything about it, but I gravitated towards higher proof, and it was barrel strength. And I picked it up. And I really just felt it was a different whiskey that I had drank before in terms of the quality of the whiskey. And from there, I just kind of like fell down the rabbit hole, which accelerated when I moved to Houston, thanks to some people that were very generous with their knowledge and shared a lot of enthusiasm for the brand. And, you know, I've really, really been in that corner for a long time. I'll drink a little bit of other stuff from other distilleries and have an appreciation for it, like Dusty's, like Louis said, but Four Roses definitely holds a special place in my heart, not only due to the quality, but to some other aspects like transparency, you know, warehouses, tiers, ricks.
We're going to get into all that,
Yeah.
especially with Four Roses and their runs and things. But when you guys keep mentioning Dusty's, I think a lot of people hear that term and right away go to Wild Turkey. That's not necessarily the case, though. Correct?
I mean, I've tried some Stitzel Weller at your house before.
Yeah. The lead decanter.
The lead decanter.
Yeah.
You only can drink 1 ounce.
That's right.
But a Dusty is more related to age, correct? Or am I missing?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I mean, the standard bearer for most people, I guess, would be the Wild Turkey, the 8101s from back in the day. But I was mentioning earlier, I had a old Ezra that was killer from the 70s, which I think was Old Medley.
Yeah.
A lot of pre-Fire Heaven Hill is considered
Some
to
old
be-
granddad.
So old National Distillers,
Yeah.
old granddad. I picked up a
Butterscotch.
birth year bottle recently.
So there can be a variety kind of in that Dusty category.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And when you say age, it's when it was distilled as opposed to age statement, right? Like how old a whiskey is.
So do you, you know, because you think is a Dusty a moving target? Is you know, does it have to be 15 years ago, 10 years ago? What kind of qualifies it as a Dusty?
Depends on the distillery, right? I mean, yeah, that's the way I look at it. To me, like with Wild Turkey, and I don't know about you guys, but anything 03 or before has that dusty quality to it.
You're talking about when they change their stills and stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
For my thing, I think it's a little bit further back, maybe like 96 or 97, especially for the 8101s.
Okay.
Maybe for their older stuff, like the 12 years. You
Yeah.
can go a little bit into the 2000s.
So-
but yeah, I think they changed. They went from a
04?
cedar tank to stainless tanks, and then they also changed the entry proof a little bit.
Yeah.
which I think kind of changed.
I think they're up to 114 now, aren't they, on their entry proof?
I think so.
yeah.
They used to be a lot lower.
And I didn't mean to get off topic there, but
Well, no, it's a good question.
people talk about Dusties, and I think sometimes, you know, unless you kind of people know, you think people know, but there might be
Yeah.
people listening who go, "What the hell is a Dusty?"
Dusty.
If the turkey's looking at you and it's sitting on the shelf, you better buy it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's always looking at you.
So when I find a product I like, whether it's a wine or a spirit or whatever it is, once I taste something and go, okay, that's pretty good, I kind of want to know the story behind it. And that's what always intrigues me about things. And when I first started looking into Four Roses, I thought it's a newer product because, you know, I hadn't seen or heard a lot about it. I grew up, you know, I'm 50-something, grew up back in the day, never even heard of Four Roses. You know, you heard of Jim Beam, you heard, of course, of Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, things like that. So I thought, well, it must be a newer product. But come to find out, it's really not. It's got an interesting history that it's been around since the mid to late 1800s.
Yeah, pre-prohibition.
Pre-prohibition. And, you know, it's another one of those stories where it's a person who started this, like most of these older distilleries are, like a Jim Beam or a Jack Daniels or
Yeah.
Old Rip from Turkey and things like that.
I think it was Paul Jones.
Paul Jones
Jr.
Yeah, Paul Jones,
in the
1860.
1800s. Yeah. And then
Well, if you've heard Al Young tell a story,
Does he tell a story of how it got its name? Mm-hmm. Okay, what's his version of the story?
so
I've heard two different versions.
he showed up to court, what would turn out to be his wife, and had a corsage made of 4 roses for her.
Okay, yeah, he had sent her a letter that kind of asking her to, I don't know if it was to be engaged, but would be an odd way to do, to send a note to do that, but I think that's what the story was.
Yeah.
Things were different back then.
And she sent
A lot
a note
different,
back saying that if I come with a corsage with 4 roses, that'll be a yes. If I don't, then that's a no. And
yeah, so I think the story that they tell in the distillery was very, very similar to that. He approached her and basically proposed to her and said that if she accepted the offer, they were going to have it was a governor's ball.
Yeah,
or
some
a
kind of
big
dance,
party or
yeah.
some kind of dance. And if she accepted the offer to come wearing roses, and she showed up to the ball with I think it was a corsage or something along the lines of that, with 4 roses on it. So from that, he took that, she accepted his proposal and obviously got really hyped about it, and then named the distillery thus.
Yeah, which is and I didn't know that it started actually in Georgia and then moved to Tennessee and then finally got up into Kentucky in 1884. And it was because of, taxes and things like that kind of drove him to make the decisions that he made. It was an interesting story to know that it didn't actually start in Kentucky.
Well, and then I think he bought the old Frankfurt distillery, if I remember correctly.
He did.
And then from there, Seagram's
In 1943.
And that's why you weren't super familiar with it, because Seagram's bought it over and decided that it wasn't going to make too much money in the United States, so they began as an export-only distillery.
Which is weird because I was reading the history of it, and in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, the number one selling bourbon in the United States,
It's 4 roses.
4 Roses. And they took it as the number one bourbon in the mid-50s and said, we're done.
Yeah.
We're going to get out of this market. We see,
I know
which really wasn't a bad move, because then you get into the 70s, 17, 18 years later, and, everybody had to go over to the European
Because
market.
nobody wanted to drink bourbon anymore.
Because
There's
of
a lot of clear spirits.
Yeah. So
Asian markets just took off. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And then you get into the story of them coming back to the States, but not to jump too far ahead. 1966, we always talk about Wild Turkey and the history of Jimmy being there. But 1966, I didn't realize it was then that Jim Rutledge started with 4 Roses.
Dang, was it that far back?
1966.
I didn't even
He was
know
He's
in his early 20s.
very steeped in 4 roses lore.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he ended up going to New York City, I guess, is where they said they had their corporate office. And he worked there until 1997 when he wanted to come back to 4 Roses in Kentucky, where he was from. And then it was from there that he said he wanted to start pushing to bring
Bring it back.
back to the
Here we
States.
thought we were the experts. I mean, Rob is just
I know he's spitting
History
knowledge.
buff.
Look at the
History buff.
No. I research.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to interrupt and say we got something in our glass.
We
here. We should probably just mention what we're drinking right now. We have got a, I would say a pretty legendary pour of 4 Roses. We've got a 15-year-old gift shop OESK. It's BS734F. We can talk about codes and stuff like that, warehouse codes and stuff later. But anyway, pretty legendary stuff that we're drinking right now.
It's bottled in 2014, so distilled in 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leo, you have, I don't know, Luis, do you have some 15-year-olds like he has here?
I don't have that one in particular. They also later released a couple of older 14-year-olds or 16-year-olds, the Brent Elliott Select. So I got a couple of those stashed away. But no, I think I've put quite a dent on that bottle over at Leo's house before.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's a special bottle for sure.
So how common were, 15-year-old? I mean, I know, back in the day they had a surplus of whiskey. The craze wasn't there. But was that a pretty common thing from Four Roses as well to see 15-year-old bottles?
No, you tend to only see it to mark special occasions. Like, for example, this is the grand opening of the Cox Creek gift shop.
Okay.
And you have the Father's Day OESV that I brought, which is almost a 16-year OESV. And then they just did the grand ceremony for the Visitor Center, which is a 20-year OBSV. Before that, there's a very famous OBSV run that was released out of the gift shop, I believe, in between 5 and 10 barrels. But those were 16 to 17 years. So most of the stuff they release is between 8 to 12 years old.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
Just for me being kind of new to this, I had never seen a 15-year-old Four Roses.
Which Luis talked about earlier about the value, and if you can pick up one retail, Four Roses is producing barrel strength, unfiltered, unchilled picks, median age 9 to 10 years. I think it's still an incredible value.
And
And
the
what,
retail,
$90
$75.
75.
Yeah.
75?
At a small mom and pop shop, maybe 90 to
Yeah, that's what I
100.
figured, 89, 99, something like that.
But it's still super quality product if you can find it retail. And, we don't, even on the secondary market, I've discussed it before, you can still find some pretty incredible deals on some stuff that
I don't know. If you haven't gotten into Four Roses, you probably shouldn't explore it at all.
you probably should. You know what? Scratch that.
Good point, Leo.
Don't talk about. Don't even think about that.
In fact, we probably shouldn't publish this podcast.
Probably should. It's hard enough to find as it is.
Yeah.
No, but like you're saying, there's still some good value, and especially the hard part for new people getting into Four Roses is, like we were talking about earlier, deciphering the codes on the front. Once you've been experienced with a little bit Four Roses for a while, you tend to kind of be able to decode the labels on the front. And if you have knowledge of what are the better runs, or as a community, what has been more well received versus others, then you can still find some value. But it's kind of hard now to take a flyer on a bottle. As soon as it's released, it's $80 retail. Even if it's the worst quote unquote, to me, worst recipe, it's still going to go on secondary for at least double that. So you're looking at $150 minimum to try on secondary Four Roses bottle. That it's always going to be quality, but it may not be exceptional.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard if you don't know what you're getting into to really be able to pick up some good value.
So, and when you talk about kind of decoding the label, we're talking about barrel picks. These are special picks done by stores or groups or something along that line.
Yeah.
Let's talk, because that's where I think the craze is. How much?
Well, you've recently done one, right?
Yeah, I did, and it was an experience.
Yeah.
I want to get into that because that was a lot of fun. We picked 4 barrels over there, and that was by far the best experience that I had.
I was going to say the Four Roses barrel pick experience is far and away
I've
the
heard
best
it's,
barrel pick
I've heard it's
experience.
great.
It's pretty awesome. I'd say one thing: if Buffalo Trace didn't, to me this year it was Buffalo Trace because Freddie was like,
I mean, that's yeah.
there with us.
If
I
you're
will say
thinking just
similar to Al Young.
Yeah.
If you have the opportunity to pick with Freddie Johnson, that's going to be an experience you'll never forget.
Yeah, and see, for that reason, going around with him, seeing the history, following him, hearing him tell stories, an experience that compares to nothing. But then going in to pick the barrel, it was awesome that he was there with us. But
the actual selection, it was
I had
4
more
barrels,
fun walking around with him than I did picking the
Oh
barrel.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
The behind the scenes
So-
tour stuff was way
better.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
him.
But the actual picking experience, yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, my ranking is Four Roses and Maker's Mark as far as like actual picking experiences because
I heard,
it's like a lab in
yeah.
Maker's Mark.
Maker's Mark is facilities. I've seen pictures. It looks beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's awesome.
Oh, it's stunning.
Yeah.
Shahuli did all the. He's a famous glass artist. He did
Yeah.
all the glass.
He did.
I didn't realize he did
What's
that.
in the warehouses there? He
Yeah.
did that?
Yeah, yeah. It's
beautiful
So
stuff.
just
like
absolutely stunning.
that's like when I walked in there, I was like,
Luis,
I've
will you
been
hand
to
me
the
the
museum.
Bill's
in-
OBSK, please?
Oh yeah. So I've been to the
Red wax.
the Shilluli, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it. the museum in Seattle, and when we did that Maker's Mark pick, I noticed all that glass, and I was like, well, I know who this came from.
It's a good sound right
That's
there.
a good sound.
Beautiful
Yeah.
sound.
Tight cork there.
Beautiful bottle.
Should we talk about just briefly, just kind of just the standard offerings? Just
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about because I don't think there's as much
That's a
hype
good point.
about the 4 bottles that are on the shelf
Yeah.
every day.
I will say that the standard single barrel OBSV 100 proof bourbon by Four Roses is probably the best value that you can find and walk into any place, any liquor store that you can drive up to, and it's accessible.
Yeah, for
Not
all the
a-
hype that Wild Turkey Rare Breed gets, I think it's up there with that. And it's
yeah.
around the same price point. I think
Yeah.
$40.
40, 45, 40 to 50, depending on where you're at.
Because you're looking at what's the age statement on just the standard single barrel? Roughly 8
But
years.
between 7 to 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. That's pretty freaking good for right on the shelf, easy access.
That's what she
And
said.
we've had some 100 proof shelf bottles at Luis's house that are just like honey barrels. You know, like if you find
Yeah.
like a store pick that's phenomenal and you have the opportunity to get multiple of them, it can be similar with the Four Roses 100 proof picks as well.
Yeah.
And that's an
100 proof
advanced
picks.
Yeah. Well, not even a picks, just 100 proof shelfers. You know, since
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
single barrels, they're all going to vary a little bit
Sure.
in flavor. But I've had some that I've blinded him on and blinded some other friends on that they couldn't believe it was just a shelfer
Really?
because of the rich viscosity, the complexity, the depth of flavor.
So here's a conversation Carter and I have had. Tell them our theory, or maybe it's just mine. I can't remember if you agreed with me. You know, tier 6 for barrel proof should be the best. You know, because we're talking about flavor.
Well, in terms of, I mean, I would argue against that.
Okay.
Recently, there's been a lot of hype. People that are getting into Four Roses now want high proof. Tier 6 is the best, but I would argue that you can find much better barrels at lower tiers.
Okay. See, that was my thought was, and you guys can tell me your thoughts. There is that thought that tier 6, because it's not going to be proofed down coming out of the barrel, should be higher proof and have some great flavor to it. The reverse of that would be if you're going to water it down, I want something on tier 1 or 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That doesn't have the angel share going away, which means the amount of water that needs to go in shouldn't be as much.
Well,
so it should be in theory, a better flavor.
I think it's similar to, like, Luis and I both appreciate El Tesoro tequila a lot, and it's distilled to proof. So in that aspect, if you have a tier 1 OBSV that clocks in at, 53%, it's diluted less to become 100 proof.
Yeah,
Right.
and that has been our theory. And actually, I think that we've talked about that with Wild Turkey because now their barrel entry proof is higher
114.
compared to what it used to be. And I don't know if that plays into the whole like theory thing, but I don't know. The old stuff is so good.
We thought about looking for like a tier, just a standard shelf.
tier 1. Yeah.
Tier 1, a tier 3, and a tier 6, and kind of doing a blind and seeing if you thought, if you could tell a difference.
The only
what
problem,
you like.
the only problem with that though is
Yeah.
like we said, since they're single barrels, you can get a tier 1 banger and then get a tier 6 mediocre barrel,
And the
and
next
you'll be
one.
like, okay, the tier 1's obviously better. But then the next time around, you can get a tier 6 barrel that's a honey barrel, and the
but
tier
you
1
pass
can
up
kind
on
of
the
be a
tier
dud.
6.
Yeah.
And
So you're saying I have to do this like 100 times?
Yes.
I'll be here for it. I'll be here for it.
I mean, you could just come to my house and do it 100 times.
But yeah, I feel like all their standard offerings, one of the things that, going back to the quality, even their yellow label is a standard at most bars. I think it's super solid. So they have the Four Roses. They have the yellow label. They have the small batch. They have the single barrel, which just spent some time talking about. And then they have the newest one, which is the Fourth Rose, which is the small batch select. And each one is a different combination of the 10 recipes that you can choose from the single barrel.
So do you know those? Because the only one I know is there's 6 recipes in the small batch select.
Right.
I don't know what's in the...
So the yellow label has all of them.
That's what I thought. Okay, I wasn't sure about that, but that's what I thought.
I think the small batch is either 8 or 10.
Okay.
Then the single barrels, obviously, they're all OBSVs. which I think gets slept on. I think because it is the single barrel standard. But to me,
Well, no, rightfully so. People should not pay attention to that.
Yeah. I was just about to say, let's not reveal anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's the standard single barrel. People should not get excited.
Yeah, don't worry about OBS.
don't get excited about OBSV. But if you do venture in the world, there are some bangers. And and to me, what I love the most about OBSV, the worst one I've ever had is still really, really good. And the best of them are comparable to the best of any other recipe. Whereas I feel some other recipes have a little bit more tendency to have duds in them.
There's more variation.
Yeah.
So, do you keep a bottle of each of the 4 offerings? Or are you just like single barrels and then, I like the OBSV, the single barrel, and I like small batch select? That's kind of where I'm at. I don't really, I've never owned a bottle of the small batch or I call it the yellow label, the 80 proof.
I guess
would
now
say
it's
the
tan or brown label.
Yeah, it's changed now.
small batch select, 100 proof, single barrels, private selection picks, and the small batch limited edition is
Oh, yeah.
where I have the most of them. Yeah.
I mean, you make it sound like you just go grab those off the shelf. And the small batch limited.
Oh, yeah.
I always pick those
I
up.
find those everywhere.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to me, like
The other ones
Luis-
have their place.
oh, yeah, sure.
Great mint juleps.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Luis and I we can relate because we both went on a pick together, and we had an OBSF that was just phenomenal, just like unbelievable.
This story reminded me of the short bottle you have.
The short and blind.
So we all pretty much consensus like this particular pick, but they only had like a few cases of it. It was only going to be like
68 bottles, you said?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we picked it as our favorite, and then Mandy did the big reveal. And when you do a pick of Four Roses, they have all the barrels laid out for you, but they have these barrel covers so you can't see the information, so it's truly blind. But once you decide, they pull it off, and each barrel has a fill line of how much whiskey obviously is left in the barrel. And this one was like all the way to the bottom. And it's like, well, how many bottles is that? And she's like, I can't promise any more than 60 bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, for an enthusiast, is a dream
Yeah.
to have something that exclusive, right? But when you're buying for a store, you have to consider.
Oh yeah. You always have to think about that. But anyway, multiple people had passed on that because we saw
For the same reason.
for that reason. And she, Mandy, who runs the program, there at Cox Creek for the single barrels, she was like, "Yeah, we're gonna just probably pour this into Yellow Label." I was like, "Oh my!"
It hurt so much. She looked at us. She's like, "Yeah, this is probably the third or fourth time this has happened. So this is probably the last time we bring this barrel out, and we're dumping into Yellow Label
Yeah.
tomorrow."
Like,
Well,
just dump a 300 milliliter flask.
I wish, dude, I would have loved to bring some of that home. That would have been amazing.
And my response would be, why even bring that barrel out? But then you have your story, Leo, of this same kind of thing, but you guys
Yeah.
ended up taking the barrel.
Well, we ended up picking a pretty damn good one too, as a secondary. But yeah,
Well, I mean, a store. I don't want to say the point of a pick, but one of the main drives behind doing these picks is to bring customers into the store, right?
Absolutely.
And have the customers try your picks and then possibly love the pick and be able to come back to have
try
some of your
other things.
other
Yeah.
things.
Sure.
But if you only have 60 bottles, you're limiting your exposure to 60 people at most. And, in those picks, most of the people that go on those picks, the store doesn't pay for your travel. They don't pay for your stay. So you're kind of paying for that on your own. One, for the experience, but two, because they also promise you certain bottles of what you're picking.
Sure.
So the standard, I guess, is to offer you a case of the barrel that you've picked.
Good bottle.
So that's 6 bottles. So there's 4 people there, 4 to 8 people at the pick. If they had offered us 6 bottles each, that's 24 bottles. We would have taken half of the barrel then. So the store would have had 30-something bottles to share with their customers. Yeah. So business-wise, it doesn't make sense. But like he's saying, as an enthusiast, that's what you dream of, like a short barrel.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Did you have one?
No, so I wasn't involved in that pick.
But
I
you
do
have
the
a bottle that was
Yes.
a short barrel.
Correct.
72 bottles only.
72 bottles. Yeah, short and blind. So the guys at Blind pig, Nathan and Aaron have they're kind of like folklore with Four Roses picks, especially because of that one. It's short and blind. It's a PS 26.5 I barrel, 72 bottles. The sticker, so you no longer can do stickers. The sticker on that one is just phenomenal. And I said, like, when I moved to Houston, my love for Four Roses kind of just blossomed. And one of the reasons that I love this bourbon so much is because of the camaraderie. And somebody, Brian Kaiser, is a huge Four Roses fan.
I know the name, yeah.
And he loves and shared his love with me for high proof, high tier, OESVs, OBSVs. I could just hear him right now talking about barrel char, notes of cherry, et cetera, et cetera. And that is one of the runs that, is really a very famous run across the nation, PS 26. And
I'm chuckled earlier because you just remember that whole code on the front.
Yeah.
It's not that you just know the bottle, the recipe, and who picked it. You know what run, and that sticks in your mind as well. That's amazing, but crazy at the same time.
One of the things Luis talked about earlier is like you come to recognize, right? So P Warehouse, south side of the warehouse, 26 Rick, 5th tier, barrel precision I. And so you'll know that if you find another barrel that's close to that, it might have similar qualities. And they can also have huge variations as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Well, let's
I haven't gotten that far, but what I do is I actually have like notes in my phone, and I take notes, and I'm just like, that run, I need to look for that run, and that.
And where do you get that consensus? Where do you get? Is it like groups? Is there a Four Roses kind of community that goes?
I would say like you find people that have similar palates, right? So being part of a picking team, you'll have people that you gravitate towards and have common ground with and alignment with. And similarly, there are people that, are across the nation where if he likes something, I know that there's a high probability that I'm really going to enjoy it as well. And vice versa. Other enthusiasts may have a different palate, and if he really likes something, I know I probably won't enjoy it because there's such a wide spectrum.
But there's some runs, tell me if I'm wrong, some runs that run, you have mentioned some to me, Carter, that is like, okay, this run, get it while you can because everybody wants it.
They're almost universally loved.
JE 32.6, PS 27.
PS 26.
Yeah. QS OESKs.
And like you were mentioning, one of the things that going back to the initial conversation of what got me into Four Roses, the community of Four Roses at the time when I started wasn't as cliquey or bro-y as like the Buffalo Trace one. I feel like the people that were into Four Roses really loved.
They want to share
the knowledge. Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if you find people with different palates than you, they're still very much wanting to converse about what they're tasting and why they're tasting that way. A good example is a fellow Four Roses lover here in Houston, Wes Ray. He detests basically the F yeast strain. And for me, I'm not the biggest fan of the Q yeast strain. And I respect his palate, that we have a lot of similarities in our choices that we like for other recipes. But when it comes to Fs, for whatever reason, there's something about it that doesn't quite vibe with him. And then so we'll end up trading.
Probably the mint.
Yeah, the mint. So the F recipe can be very minty, and for a lot of people, it can be toothpastey.
Take a guess.
But for me, like the Q yeast strain is very floral, and to me can taste very medicinal. So he'll tell me a bottle's a banger that's a Q recipe, and I'll try it. I'm like, it's fine, and I'll trade him for it because he has an F recipe that I really, really enjoy. So. But again, the community is a little bit smaller, and everybody's willing to kind of share that knowledge. So the information's out there if you really just want to.
Okay, I guess
most people are willing to share.
True.
Yeah, some are. Well,
why do you both keep looking at Luis?
Oh, I'm not looking at Luis. We're just looking at.
Probably because I'm so incredibly
because he's handsome. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Handsome.
That makes sense.
I mean, like, and this is going to be like super humble brag.
You just don't notice me looking at you. I apologize.
I kind of felt
But you
the
feel
warmth.
overlooked.
Oh, yes. But if he grabs your ass, then
I mean,
you know.
I did tell you, get a handful.
Yeah.
I walked through the door. Yeah.
Nice.
But like when we do, because I've in the past 3 years done picks at Four Roses. Yes, that's a humble brag.
Just keep rubbing it in. Keep rubbing it in.
When
He does this like on every podcast. It's like,
No,
I'm going to make a sounder and just go, hold on, and then I'll hit
I've
it
been there
for
so
you.
many times.
But like I make notes of all the picks that I like on our sheet that we get, and I'll say, okay, that's an OBSF that is pretty freaking good. You know, that like for instance the one which I got burnt really hard on the one that we selected because I got a couple of picks. I found a couple of picks secondary on the OBSF from our year, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
It's like nothing could replicate that.
That's the honey barrel.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't always hold true. But like for instance, I remember us really liking this OBSQ run from last year, and
Which I had steered very clear of Q's before that.
me too.
Yeah.
I hate Q's, generally speaking.
Hated. Past tense.
Hated.
You're not
This-
alone.
And I generally don't like F's.
Yeah.
But
Well, we're talking a lot of lingo here.
yeah, we should
Why
probably
don't
clear
we-
the air on that.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and you two guys break down kind of the recipes, the yeast strains, and kind of how it all works. What's the code? The simple code. I know it's on the tag for people who are
grab a
listening.
neck
You go
tag.
to the store, you're going to hear all this, but just know there's a neck tag that's on
Well,
the
I'll take care of the easy part. As Luis said, he does the heavy lifting. So O is
Fruity.
no.
Old fruit.
The first O.
Oh, so O stands
Original.
for
Original.
Yeah, old Prentice.
Yeah. Old
which
Prentice.
is what the old distillery was called,
And S is for straight bourbon.
straight bourbon, and then the
B-
other
B
two
and E
letters
is
are
the
B
rye.
and E. Yeah, so it talks about the mash bill. So we have 2 mash bills and then 5 yeast strains, and that's how you get 10 total recipes. The 2 mash bills are a high rye, which is the B, and it stands for bold. And it's going to be 35% rye,
Or balls.
and then and
So it's
then
got the spice.
and then it does got the spice. And then the E mash bill is easy, and that's a 20% rye.
which is still a high
Which
rye.
is still a fairly high rye for bourbon.
Correct. And especially since some people are using wheat. So that's why you always get, to me, a good balance in the Four Roses. And then you have your 5 yeast strains. So alphabetically, you have F, which can be your minty yeast strain. Then you have K, which is traditionally your spicier yeast strain. Then you have Q, or O, I guess, before O before Q. O is your fruitier, your bold fruit. Q is your floral. And then you'll have V, which is light fruit and more of a creamy.
This is where we plug that Luis is a teacher, and that's why he knows alphabetical order.
Yeah, I was impressed with that. Yeah. I would have just struggled trying to remember them all, let alone put them in order like that.
It's like, I've been singing ABCs with my daughter. She's 2, so maybe I could take a stab at it as well. But Luis has got more experience.
But if you forget, one of the cool parts about the private select barrels is that they have these neck tags on them. And if you look at the very, very back, it describes what all the yeast strains are. It describes what each one is.
What the listeners don't know is that we blindfolded Luis, so he wasn't looking at the neck tag when he did that just now.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how I did. Oh, I crushed it for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it describes everything. It tells you exactly traditionally what that yeast strain and what that mash bill provides. But what I love about Four Roses is that sometimes you get some off-profile weird barrels. There's a famous OBSV called Dillicious, like DILL.
Such a good one.
Because it's just super heavy on the dill notes.
Really?
Which is, traditionally
I
MGP
crushed that
ryes
one.
can be a little bit dilly. But this OBSV, for whatever reason, like the dill note was very prominent. So it had like a savory note to kind of go along with the spiciness, which made it very unique. And, if you're not into dill, obviously you probably wouldn't like it, but
Right.
it made it very unique and very interesting and
I
very
like
fun
dill.
to drink.
So
Nothing-
that
My
sounds
wife is
interesting.
Russian. It's in every dish.
That was
That's kind of
also
a dirty word these days.
that was also a lock and key pick, I believe. Mm-hmm. So certain stores similar to Blind Pig, Lock and Key, Bill's Package Store in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Ryan's Liquor. Obviously.
Shout out.
Can be if you get one of their picks, it's going to be head and shoulders above. Your money's well spent.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
No picks are bad, but you can trust the people at those stores because they're sending a consistent pick team that has experience picking those barrels.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about, we've talked about Specs, a big local liquor store here in Houston, but all over
it's crazy
Texas.
that Blind Pig hasn't gotten a Four Roses pick recently.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Well, unfortunately, the reason why is because they Four Roses in the before times when nobody cared about bourbon, they were trying to get picks out to anybody who would want to pick, right? But as the bourbon market started booming, they're now requiring the store to sell a certain amount of their base products.
Oh, really?
Right. So if you're not selling enough yellow label, if you're not selling enough small batch, if you're not selling enough small batch select, if you're not selling enough single barrel, by volume, they're not going to offer you a pick, even if you've had years and years of relationship, even if you're notorious for picking money.
I mean, the
barrels.
relationship still means a lot. So I know that, the reps, which we have a great rep in Houston, if there's a store like Blind Pig that has a history, they can allocate picks as well.
Do the reps control who get to have a pick and who don't? Or is it the distillery and the relationship with the store?
I think the reps have a big hand in it.
Oh, they do?
They have a lot of power.
They do. Okay.
But they're not obviously in direct control. But I know for a fact that their market volume sales for the regular standard shelf products is important.
How does that work when I see like a group like Houston Bourbon Society, or I don't know that Bourbon Hounds have ever done a Four Roses pick, but I've seen other groups do a pick. So. How does a group they still have to go through a store, and is it the store being polite and saying we're going to let you have this barrel, but you're going to sell it through our store? Yeah,
unfortunately, because of the 3-tier system, you have to go through
a distributor
and a store. So you as an entity, as a group of people, you can't go directly to Four Roses and buy a barrel.
Right.
You have to buy through a store, and the store has to get it through a distributor, and then finally they can sell it retail to you. So for the Houston Whiskey Social, a lot of times they'll go through Village Liquor. They'll go through sometimes Rice or whoever.
And the social gets allocated because it's charitable.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
But my question would be is like, say we wanted to pick and we wanted to run it for us through Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And we had a store that said, hey, you can run it through my store. Does the store have to give up the pick that they're allocated, or do you have to go to the rep and go, hey, can we get a pick for us? And he or she makes that call.
I think it wouldn't be the rep. I know that certain distilleries do award charity barrels. And so if you pick an organization that you're going to donate to, you may be awarded a barrel that way, and you can choose which retailer to go through.
Okay.
Right. So you reach out through Four Roses and you let them know, hey, we want to get a barrel for this charity. You explain to them what the charity is all about. And if they deem it a worthy cause, then they can allocate you a barrel.
Okay.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool. All right. So every time somebody hears us talking about one of the bottles or whatever might come up and we're OB, OE, whatever, SK, SV, now they kind of have an idea that we're talking about the particular recipe that was that particular bottle, that barrel. Now let's get into the geeky, nerdy part of this, and this might listeners, have a pour ready and just try to keep up because this I still don't know this yet, and it's amazing to me that how many of you guys.
Well, that's why I try to say that I consider myself a novice because there's people that have such a head start, and it's almost like a walking encyclopedia of the knowledge that they can share.
Yeah.
I feel like me and Leo kind of got started at the same time, so we have a lot of knowledge over the newer picks, like everything released after 2017. We were, I don't want to say a part of because we didn't do a lot of the picks, but we've experienced them through trades, through drinking with other Four Roses lovers. So all the newer stuff we're a little bit more familiar with. But I mean, they started releasing single barrel picks in 2009, 2010.
I think 2009 was the first.
The first one.
Release,
So people like, Lauren Simpson out in Nashville or in Clarksville.
I mean, may have picked the most Four Roses barrels in history.
Ever, yeah. He's like
really?
He's like the godfather of Four Roses.
When we talk about camaraderie, I mean, somebody that's been involved in the brand and shared the enthusiasm for that long, people like that welcome people that are just new to it and just openly share that passion and give them that knowledge. And so, like I said, him and Brian Kaiser, I owe a lot of credit for the love that I have for it.
Yeah.
And if you ever have a question, you just reach out, and like he said, they're really excited to talk to you about it and kind of share that wealth of information with you.
When you talk about that, obviously they need to find them on Facebook or whatever their social media might be. But is there, I know we have Bourbon.
Carrier pigeon.
Carrier pigeon. That would work. Telegram.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Send a raven.
Yeah. Is there a public group? I know there's some private Four Roses groups that are specific. Are there public groups for people who just
don't
know a lot, but I want to start learning?
Four Roses Mellow Moments is probably
Is that public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that probably the best one?
Huge membership. One of the guys that does a lot of work with it, Andrew Bacon, has a lot of knowledge. Another very generous person about sharing his enthusiasm for it. He does a really great job.
Is Run for the Roses still around?
That's Kentucky Derby.
There was another. There was another.
I don't think so. Not as much anymore.
That was also pretty active when I first got started. And those were kind of the Four Rose Mellow Moments, and then Run for the Roses were my the two sources or the two resources that I could kind of go hit up the group, be like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And like you mentioned, everybody's excited about Four Roses. Everybody's excited that you're into Four Roses, and they just want to.
Well, in addition to that, the cool thing about Four Roses and Mellow Moments is when new people get excited about it, and they're like, "Hey, I'm trying to complete my first
10 recipes."
10 recipes. Yeah. There's people that have been in it for a while, and they're like, "Hey, which recipe do you need?" And they'll help that person complete the 10 recipes at a reasonable cost compared to secondary because
they've been.
I remember the first time. I remember OBSK was the last recipe that I needed, and somebody very generous helped me get a bottle of OBSK, and I was just like, I've got all 10 recipes now. It was a proud moment for me.
Which is very cool, and you bring up a great point because I respect getting the 10 recipes a lot more than I respect getting the horsies.
Goes without saying.
Without saying, but I love, because you're right. When I first kind of got, I don't want to say suckered in, but I got sucked into, I love Four Roses and I want to get these picks. That was my first goal, was trying to get all 10 recipes, and I got them all. I don't have it twice, so I'm getting a couple bottles that are getting kind of low, and I'm afraid to drink them because I'm not going to have my recipes anymore.
It's so funny you said that because I have.
You've got good friends that could help.
True. Yeah. But I mean, even you're down to your last OESO, right?
So recently I organized my Four Roses by recipe, and surprisingly, kind of not surprisingly, I'm not a big OESO fan compared to how popular it is now. I only have 2 bottles of it.
Really?
Yeah. And lots of bottles of other recipes that aren't as popular right now.
Yeah. OBSV.
No, that one's...
That was trash.
And for me, it's like, I don't necessarily love the Q strain, so I think I'm down to like you said, like maybe last 30% of my OESQ. And I don't know if I'm going to get another one because I haven't found one that I've truly, truly loved. But at the same time, being one of the Four Roses guys, I feel like I have to have all 10 recipes.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to get 2 of the Total Wine OESK or OESQ and the OBSQ.
The OBS, I think it was the E-Barrel, was really good.
Yeah, that's a good.
I haven't opened.
Yeah.
I opened which one did I open that you tried?
RS2460.
You opened the OESQ from Total Wine.
So I got 2 of each.
2 Total Wines. There's the E that was released in Houston.
And the B that was released in Houston. Both of them.
Right, no, but there was 2 Total Wines OBSQs.
Oh, 2 different runs.
Yeah.
Same run.
Different barrels.
Different
states.
So one was an E, the other one was it U?
I'm not sure. You may be right.
I don't know if this is... Go ahead.
No, okay, so when it comes down to favorite recipes, though, you guys got to have your favorite, right? Like, and obviously there's going to be oddball, or like there are going to be unique barrels from, recipes that maybe you don't particularly like that are going to be really good. But where do you tend to lie?
I think mine's pretty obvious because I keep trying to downplay it, but barrel strength OBSV for me, Luis said earlier, the worst is going to be very good, and the best can be pretty stellar.
Agreed.
I think he started talking first because he knew I was going to say the same thing.
Oh, okay. So he
OBSV, yeah, he stole my answer.
Yeah, cool.
No,
he went over the top on you.
OBSV is absolutely my favorite recipe. It's been that way for
which has
forever.
started to catch on recently, not at a high level, but with some enthusiasts.
Yeah, and it was like I said, it was slept on for the longest time because it is the most common, and it's every single barrel non-private select is an OBSV. Their standard single barrels an OBSV, so it's very consistent. So I feel like it got slept on for a while, but the most special, the newest release, when they opened up the new distillery, or when they redid the whole the gift shop, or what's it called, the visitor center.
Yeah.
When they just released a 20-year.
We've got the box right there to your left.
Yeah, they released 13 barrels. Was it that many?
I'm not sure how many, but
I think they released 13 barrels of 20-year OBSV.
OBSV tends to be a recipe that ages very well.
Really?
Yeah.
Right, and so from newer Four Roses people, the most beloved limited edition was the 2019. That's the consensus in the community that people think that's the best one.
Okay.
And to me, one of the reasons that's the best one is because that has, I think, some 19 or 20-year OBSV inside it.
Oh, wow.
And I think it really, really brings out beautiful traditional bourbon notes, but also has this like rich complexity, and it really helps on the finish. So it's my favorite recipe, and when I saw that,
we've been talking a lot about
OBSV.
private selections, but to Luis's point, we'd be kind of swing and a miss if we didn't talk about the small batch limited editions.
Oh yeah.
Well, but finish with your favorite recipe.
So, okay. OESQ. Just kidding. No, OBSV is actually my favorite recipe.
All three of you like the same one?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, you guys can chuckle because you're
Great
the
minds.
enthusiast. You want to know my favorite recipe? I'm going to tell you.
Well, we don't have to chuckle.
You will, though. You might. You might be like, dumbass.
What is it?
OBSK.
So
that is not a chuckle.
very well respected.
That's my favorite recipe.
So I love this is a OBSK, the
bills
pour that Matt and I are sharing right now.
Having the same too.
And this is the first time that I went to Lauren's event. He does a charity event for special ops excursions, SOCs. It's for special forces soldiers when they come back from active deployment. It gives them an opportunity to go on like excursions with their family and kind of have like a break between active duty and transitioning back into real life. And so it's something that is very special to me. But the first time I went to his event, I had this bottle, and it's one of the most well-balanced bourbons I've ever drank, and it's an OBSK. It's really
okay.
good. So you should try this one.
I will.
It's balanced but bold.
Yeah.
Very bold.
Well,
But that's kind of that recipe,
for
right?
balls.
It's full-bodied
for
kind
balls.
of. Yeah. So,
Yeah, small batch limited edition.
I don't want to. I want to finish on that if we can, because that's kind of if that's all right.
OBSK is the. I feel like it's the strongest recipe in terms of spice, boldness, character,
And
kind of encompassing everything.
high rye.
Not kind of putting you in a lane. It kind of is a wow factor on your palate.
Well, and it's the high rye, so you're already getting that spice.
Yeah.
And then it's the K yeast strain, so you're getting even more of that spice.
Yeah.
For the longest time, the OBSKs and OESOs were the rarest recipe. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like Leo mentioned, for him, that was the last one to complete his 10
Yeah, the
recipes.
OBSK, yeah.
See, to your point, I've heard recently that OESO and OBSO are kind of the, if you have one of those in your offerings, pick it or you're a
OBSO
dumbass.
traditionally has been pretty rare.
Yeah, for the last 2 years, we've seen kind of a glut of both of those recipes.
Yeah.
The PN 29 and 31 OBSOs. Before that, the LW 47. And
MW is on the OESOs.
Yeah, the MW.
They kind of put OESO on the map for
a lot of people.
for recent times. Yeah.
I know we kind of mentioned it, but I'd like to talk more about the experience and sorry, Leo, of going to Four Roses.
It's okay.
And Mandy.
I mean, I've
and-
come to grips with the fact that I'm just never going to pick a
Yeah,
barrel
you
of
are.
Four
Yeah, you
Roses.
are.
He already has a pick lined up, don't you?
Oh, I'm sure he does. But that experience, I think, giving them some love and talking about what you get to do there. Because if you ever have the opportunity to do it, jump on it. I don't care what kind of hoops you have to jump through to make it
I mean, I
happen
don't
in
know
your
if
personal
somebody,
life.
if somebody
Don't-
offered it, the experience to me. I don't know if I would take them up on it. You know?
Okay. Well, we'll test that theory. We'll test that
Yeah,
theory.
you think you just pass?
And when that moment happens, I need you to call me up and tell him that spot's mine.
Yeah.
Because I'm dying to go back.
Oh my gosh.
It's absolutely the best experience. I can't imagine.
I would enjoy if we had the opportunity to go together. That would be pretty.
That
cool.
would be the best. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to go with Al Young, though. So for the longest time, it was Mandy and Al Young together. Rest in peace. He was the brand ambassador. For those of you that don't know who Al Young was, he was the brand ambassador for 40 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
For the longest time, and he was like the senior brand ambassador, kind of the face of Four Roses in most markets, and just an amazing, high quality human being.
I met him once in person, and like the memories are very vivid. Like I remember him talking about picks and being like, "I have the same thing for breakfast: eggs, hot sauce, bacon. I go into the bathroom right before the picks, swash with the mouthwash," and him talking about that's why he wanted to find the mint finish in the small batch limited edition that they did for him. And talking about how Brent Elliott, he said that Brent worked very hard to find exactly what Al was looking for in the finish.
That's crazy.
And he's talking about the Al Young limited edition that was released.
50th
the 50th
anniversary of
anniversary.
his employment.
Yeah, so I guess 50th anniversary of his employment. So he was there for over 50 years, and he passed away last year, I believe.
2 years ago, wasn't it?
2 years
Yeah.
ago?
In 20.
Oh, yeah, it's 2022 now.
Yeah.
The pandemic.
Time
screwed
flies.
Yeah,
everything up.
crazy. I got to meet him when the fourth
Here?
Rose, the small batch select was released.
Poison Girl, the Cathedral.
The Cathedral, yeah. If
I mean,
those
got to
of-
give a shout out.
those
to
of you
Poison Girl.
listening,
Oh, yeah.
if you've never been to Poison Girl, don't go.
Yeah,
but if
definitely don't go.
But if you do venture over there, you'll find the best
I mean,
whiskey
Brian
bar
Wayne's
in
not there
Houston.
anymore. So.
And he did an event there, and we were lucky enough that at that time the bourbon craze hadn't totally blown up yet. So I got to sit at the bar with Al Young and my wife for about like 3 hours and just
3
talk,
hours?
Yeah, just talked roses and just kept feeding him drinks, and he just kept telling me more stories.
That's where you got all your knowledge.
That was an amazing night where I did get a little bit of my knowledge. But
Yeah.
he's an amazing human being. So to be able to do a pick with him, I can't even imagine what that's like. But talking about the picks now, it's still incredible. Mandy Vance is in charge
She's awesome.
of doing the picks. She's a great human being, and unlike some other experiences, we did a pick the day after Four Roses where the person basically was like, you guys have 52 minutes to do your pick. Do whatever you want, and then let me know what you pick. Compare
Can
that.
I guess where that was?
You can.
Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
So going from the experience at Four Roses where they kind of roll out the red carpet for you. Mandy Vance.
Well, even recently they did. If you're part of the official Mellow Moments group, they did a lottery and selected, I believe, 15 people to go do a pick with Brent Elliott and Mandy, and they did Microsoft Teams. You could watch it, right?
Really?
So
yeah.
It was like last week. I watched these people do a pick and go through the process, and they roll out the red carpet.
Yeah, so they do. Unlike other distilleries, they only do 2 picks a day. They do one.
Oh, really?
They do one in the morning, and then one in the afternoon. And Mandy is there with the little cheat sheet. She knows what barrels are what, but she does the tasting blind with you.
Yeah.
And she won't tell you what's what, but she's absolutely willing to talk tasting notes, kind of bounce ideas off of you, and really just she for our pick when we were there for Ryan's, she was our yes man the whole time. Like everything is like, hey, can we try that again? How do you feel about this? Everything was the only no we got that day was like, hey, can we have 2 barrels?
Yeah.
And she was like, sorry, you're here for one.
Because you wanted that short barrel.
Because we wanted that
and
short
the-
barrel
yeah.
and another barrel.
Yeah.
So she said no to that. But other than that, like I said, you show up and they have, first of all, the place is beautiful. They have, for us, they rolled out 10 barrels.
And talk about that, because we also got 10 barrels, but you may not always get 10 barrels. And if you have 10 barrels, then you know all 10 recipes, because they don't duplicate recipes. Is that what I understand?
That's normally the case. Sometimes I think there's been instances where they've had duplicated the recipe.
Oh, they have.
I think there are some instances where they'll bring out multiples, and then obviously they also do single barrel, the OBSV. So
Okay.
where you're tasting through only OBSVs, and they'll pull out several.
Oh,
barrels
really?
of that.
Oh, I didn't know that, Carter.
I don't think they do OBSV single barrels anymore, though.
I think you're right. I think they stopped that program.
Well, 100 proofers, yeah.
The 100 proofers, yeah.
They did stop it because I got one of the last
Discontinued,
pick
yeah.
from, what's the Mississippi?
Misanos.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
one of their.
Yeah, I got
But yeah, so you show up and they'll have anywhere from 6 to 10 barrels.
So they do go as low as 6.
Right. And if they have 6, more often than not, you're not having any O's and you're probably not having any K's, because those are the rarest recipes. So when you have 6 barrels, there's a good chance that you're getting OESQ, OBSQ, OBSV, OESV, and then OESF, OBSF.
I do want to say that even 6 barrels, to me, is really
lot.
good. Yeah.
It's a lot.
We did, the 2 other picks that we did was Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace, and each of those 3 barrels.
Yeah, that's a standard.
Obviously, it was a science project at
I thought we got 4
At
at
Maker's
Buffalo
Mark.
Trace.
no, we only got 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty standard, but you're only there for like an hour. So 3 barrels in an hour is pretty common. But at Four Roses, our first, when I went with Ryan's, we were there for like 3 hours.
Well, that must be why they do 2 a day, because they give you the morning and then they give you the afternoon. Because she was like, no rush. Guys,
Right.
take your time. Come back through the line twice. Some people, rookies, screwed up, didn't know which ones were which on the, they give you that tray with all 10 glasses. and
I'm getting called
somebody,
out. Somebody.
oh, was that you? I
You
couldn't
would,
remember
you
who
would,
that
you would
was.
be a rookie since you've been there so many times.
3 times he's done it. This was his 3rd time. And Mandy was like, who's this fucker?
She was like, I'll pour your pours, okay? Like let me do that
He
for
looks
you.
familiar. He should know the process.
Yeah,
by
he's-
now.
I know. I'm like, I'm sorry. But to your point, the year before, like not this year, but the year we picked the OBSO, we spent a lot of time delineated on like what we were going to choose and all that kind of stuff. Like I remember the night before, because Wade Woodard was on the pick this year, and he's like, "We'll be out of there in 30 minutes," and I was like, "Are you nuts? Like, no, we won't."
Yeah, I was shocked too that he said that, because I'm like, 10 bourbons. I mean, it's going to take me, I like to drink them 2 sips.
Yeah.
The first sip is kind of, and then to me, give it a few minutes. But
Plus, I mean, just a nose. I like to go nose, palate finish, then revisit. Just a nose, 10 bourbons is 30 minutes.
well, and the other part of that was
Yeah.
for me, I wanted to soak it in. I wanted to
Yes.
drag
Yeah, the
it out as
experience, yeah.
long as I could.
Yeah.
I mean, Wade's been on so many picks.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, this one, let's go next.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, hold on, wait. But for the setup, it's not like Maker's Mark, where you're in this beautiful room and it's got all these picks. Every pick that was ever done at Maker's Mark is on the wall. It's not like
pretty
that,
cool.
but it's more of that. It's to me, I kind of equate it to like being in a really famous chef's home kitchen, not his restaurant
Yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah.
This is really where stuff
Yeah,
happens.
because the barrels are there. You see the barrels.
All 10
you know,
barrels, but they really do a good job of that setup I was talking about with your own kind of placemat, 10 glasses, set up really nice.
Well, this year they had that Lazy Susan that was really cool.
Did you guys not have that?
We did
No.
not have that.
That's we knew.
And we were drinking out of plastic cups.
Man, I wonder what Leo's going to get.
Oh, he's
I
going
mean,
to
I'll
get
be
a-
lucky.
Well,
if they
they
let-
just switched glasses too.
They'll probably have me sitting outside the place on like a stool. Won't let me in there.
Like
I'm the black sheep.
Leo,
Black
we're
sheep.
good.
I mean, the black sheep of bourbon.
You'll have the gold Glencairn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really is cool to what you mentioned, Luis, is that all 10 barrels are lined up on the wall. And it's really cool that, they don't have these pre-poured for you or anything. You get to now get lined up and go through, and they have that thief, and they give each of you a sample. You go back, you put that barrel on position 1, 2, 3, all the way through 10. And then once you get all your glasses set, then they go. Well,
you're supposed to, but sometimes they can get mixed up.
If you're a rookie, if you've not done it, I tried to hold his hand. I think somebody was excited.
It's not color coded.
It's hard not to be.
You get in there and you're like, yeah.
But it really is, as far as an experience picking bourbons, I don't have a lot of them, but of the ones we did, and we did it, some pretty good distilleries that day. That was by far.
The trip that you guys went on. There's people that, appreciate bourbon for a long time and don't get to take.
Is that right?
Don't get to take part in that type of trip. So
wow.
It's a very special experience for you.
It really was. But that was my favorite from purely picking a bourbon. Yeah. That was by far my favorite.
Well, from the moment you meet up at the bottling facility in Cox Creek, and you show up and you're waiting, and then they open the gates for you.
Yep.
It creaks.
Well,
you walk down into their little lab. They have the whole setup
This guy, he's just rubbing it in.
Well, and I put the drone up,
salt in the wind.
And I flew around and got some good drone footage of everything.
Maybe you should, edit that out.
Why? What are they going to do now?
Yeah, I guess nothing.
Hey, I have my license to fly it from the FAA. So
I understand.
Yeah.
But then you said you walk into the building and they have the whole 10 barrels lined up, and they have all the swag. They have the Four Roses branded pen. They have a little leather bound notebook for you to write down all your notes. You get all the Glencairns, and they recently just switched from Glencairns to what these look like, the small shot Zweifel glasses.
What is that?
Yeah, I've got a little.
Those are amazing.
What is it?
So I don't know if they're that brand, but Schatz Weissel.
It's a whiskey sniffer with a much wider base.
Similar to this or wider than that?
I think it's similar to
wider and deeper.
It would be like
wider and deeper.
Cut the bottom, the little.
And go in the width, it runs longer.
Yeah. But I like this style of glass quite a lot. So, when I see those...
Yeah, and it says private barrel select on it, so, you get to take that
hold
home
it
with
up for
you.
the people that are watching.
On top of all the swag, they give you a little, memento of your trip. So they're really big on not just leaving there with a great barrel. They're really big about you leaving there with an amazing experience.
Which I think is a great point, because you're exactly right. Getting to bring those things home, I thought was fantastic. We didn't get that anywhere else.
No. Well, I've had I still only have one private barrel select Glencairn.
Stop breaking them.
No comment.
Okay. I got two. I got mine, and I go, Mandy, do you have any more of these? She goes, here, you want another one? And then we got down the road, and he's like, you got two of those? And I go, yeah, I just asked Mandy.
No, I'm just thinking about the one that Sandra broke.
Hey, that's you and her. You guys talk about it. Maybe get her on a barrel puck and then make her give you yours.
You can have hers.
Damn. That's my prized possession.
But you're right. I mean, you go to other distilleries and, instead of getting a branded pen, you get a golf pencil and some sticky notes.
Yeah.
And then you're drinking out of a wee Glencairn, and they're like, oh, do we get to keep this? And they're like, no, we got to wash these for the next group.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm about to spend, or the store is about to spend $10,000 to $12,000 on a barrel, and you're going to give me like a little tiny golf pencil and some notepad?
Yeah. The worst place to pick a barrel is Heaven Hill.
Man, just blast it right now.
Oh, I'm going to blast them. I'll continue blasting them.
You can talk to me about
I hear it's a really good experience. I look forward to having the opportunity one day.
I may edit that out, but that was a little tangent on my part. But,
yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Just don't let my video out after that.
I will give some love to Heaven Hill. They have a fantastic gift shop.
They really do.
They have some
and
really
good prices.
Yeah, for hats and T-shirts and things like that. I thought they were fantastic. For not having any grenades or giving us any special bottles to be able to buy, I thought they sucked again.
Yeah,
we didn't get to buy nothing.
Yeah,
we couldn't even get one of the special pours. They wouldn't let us have one. Nothing.
Yeah, that's bad.
I don't know if you can.
Was it still under construction?
I won't tell.
Oh, it was all done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't tell your story because it's also not good.
Is it Heaven Hill related?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway, this is Four Roses.
Yeah, we're talking Four Roses.
We might need to take that out.
Yeah. Who knows? But anyway, I mean, one thing I like about Four Roses is
there something you like?
there's a lot of things that I like, one thing that stands out in particular is I think it's one of the most unique bourbons out there.
Yeah.
I feel
we
like
have a pretty unique one on the tables. Hand me that PS26 5i.
Yeah, right away.
We'll cap it off with that.
yeah, but like what I'm trying to say is
How do
like,
you know that?
he knows.
Because we're nerds.
Yeah.
He knows. But the flavor profile of Four Roses, just in general, to me, is very unique. Like
But there's so many flavor profiles.
there are, but in general,
I mean, in Four Roses.
yeah. Oh, I agree. But in
Oh, well,
general,
even within recipe, there's a lot of
Yeah.
variation.
oh yeah,
Between runs and tea.
Because to be fair, you guys have kind of mentioned it. You can get a bad bottle of something, or a bad barrel of something that ends up being a bad bottle of a single barrel pick.
you know the nose really isn't very good on this. I mean, it's actually terrible.
How would you describe it?
I would describe it as euphoric.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a treat to get a pour of this. Thank you, Leo.
For those of you that aren't nerds and don't know what the recipe
Like-
is, we're tasting the short and blind from the Blind Pig.
26
I,
of 72.
it took me 5 years to get this bottle.
Did it really? When did this come out?
There's no bottle date on it, but PS26 would have been like 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth tier would have been later on in the run.
So it's either 17 or 18, I think.
I was searching for this bottle for probably 5 years before I got it.
I get like cherry with bubble gum.
That's a good describing. That's a good way to describe it. I also get a lot of the nice sweet oak notes on it.
Wow, that is fun. I mean, I really like that nose. That is really. Just to finish up on the picking part of it, if you ever get the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. And if you're able to go and get all 10 barrels, my first time, so that's kind of my standard when I go back again.
Now you have to have all 10.
Yeah, I'm going to be like, Mandy, where's the other 3
Brewers,
barrels?
yeah.
I'm short
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But no, that was quite a treat. And if you ever get the chance, I'd say jump on it. Don't think about it. Don't see if you can work it out. If
If
somebody
you're
offers
thinking about it, just call me.
yeah,
Take out a second mortgage if you have to.
yeah, whatever you need to do, go on that experience. That was
Put it on the credit card.
yeah,
okay,
whatever.
whatever it takes.
Make it happen.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's finish up talking about, we got a lot of distilleries now in this bourbon craze that have these, special releases. Even Wild Turkey, has their Master's Keep and all of this. But Four Roses does only one. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's only the one every year, right?
Right. As of 2016, there's only one. Before that, they used to do 2 special releases a year. They had a limited edition small batch, which still exists, and they also had a limited edition single barrel.
Oh, they did.
Which Brent Elliott only did one of.
yeah.
An OESK.
And,
OESK.
And then
that
he
one's
stopped.
really bad too, so don't ever buy that.
Is it
Yeah.
bad?
No.
No, it's freaking amazing.
It's really good.
Okay, you got me.
But there's multiple barrels of it. So,
Okay.
like with the rest of Four Roses, there are some that are a little bit more highly sought after than others. We talked about tiers earlier, and, tiers don't really mean much. One of the things that Al Young told me when we were hanging out at Poison Girl, I brought up the tier stuff. And he mentioned
Humble brag.
if you went into a pick and asked for a tier 6 barrels, he would have laughed you out of Four Roses.
Really? People do that?
Yes, because they believe the hype. They think tier 6 is God tier and tier 1 is rat tier, and like nobody wants to drink the peasant
not
tier. And it's not true. The only thing that guarantees you from tier 6 is that it's going to be higher proof.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're not guaranteed anything. And on that note, one of the more recent OBSK runs, the KE63, the 6 tiers, most of them are trash. They're
Really?
comparably, like
Riding a well broken in horse at the lower tiers to trying to break in a wild stallion.
Yeah.
Like it's just
the
too
higher
much.
tiers.
It's hot. It's a little bit unbalanced. You know, when you compare it to
Luis is so eloquent
other
when
whiskeys,
he
it's still
describes
very
it.
very good. But compared to other OBSKs, it really just doesn't hit. It tastes unbalanced to me.
Okay. So since 2016, they started their small batch limited release.
Oh, but well before that. I mean,
it was before that.
In 08, there was a
Marriage,
lot of people call it
right?
marriage, just marriage,
Okay.
which originally under
So they've
Jim
been doing it
Rutledge
for a while.
was it started out as a blend of like 2 or 3 recipes and expanded upon what they're doing today, where they'll take in 5, 6 recipes, different ages.
Well, I think they limited to 4 now, though, right? I think it's only 4 recipes.
I think it just depends on the year.
The last couple have been only
Yeah.
4.
So talk about how special these bottles are and how limited, obviously by name, but also by availability.
Well, I think in terms of limited, I think they do a U.S. release, a U.K. release. I think there may be like 15,000 bottles in each, so they're gettable. But I think limited, what I would describe it as, is that from Jim to Brent, I think each master distiller is trying to do a really great job of showing what they can do with a blend of recipes and yeast strains to accentuate different notes of bourbon each year. And so you go from 2019, which was very OESV forward, to 2020, which was more as a OBSK, and then blending in different aspects of the recipes in a way that really, going back to 08 to the marriage is you're just marrying these recipes together with very special barrels in a way to accentuate what the distillery's capabilities are from year to year. And so they don't try to be consistent. They try to showcase, like, hey, last year we were going for this. This year we're going to go for something completely different, and we're going to try and do it the best way that we can. And so that,
which makes it fun from the enthusiast point of view. You don't want.
Well, 21 had a lot of Q in it.
A lot of Q.
And guess what? It's freaking
which
good.
That RS-24 was very berry forward.
Yeah.
Which was off profile for that recipe, I would say, and very enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I remember being very underwhelmed by the 18, which was the 130th.
To me, that's my least favorite release.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Out of all of
Okay,
them.
okay. Which kind of surprised me. I didn't know if it was just me or what I might be missing there, because 130th, I thought it should be something that would wow me, but...
what I would say is that a lot of times with Four Roses, you can get caught in a situation where you downplay how great the bourbon is by comparing it to others. And so I would have to say, like, 2018, 130th anniversary, having it on its own, first pour of the night, phenomenal pour. But when you're comparing against other years of the small batch limited edition, it can be kind of unfair to compare in some ways.
And that's fair enough. That's a great point.
Well, similar to like the same run, right? So you may have a PS26 5i, and then you taste a barrel from a couple barrels down, and you're like, well, this one's horrible compared to this one. But on their own, they're both phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot, right?
Well, that's the innately, like, blind comparisons. They're great fun, but, like, you can really, like, totally shit on, like, one of the pours, a great bourbon, just because you're comparing it against legendary bourbons, and so. And
at the end of the day, you got to realize that the pick team just picked the best thing that was in front of them that day. And so you can say this pick sucks compared to this one, but it was the best thing that was there that day.
Oh yeah. Well, that's your only like in our experience. The last pick that we did, you and I, Rob, the O's were trash.
Yeah,
they were just not good.
They weren't in
compared
our top
to the
three.
Others.
Yeah, compared to what we had.
Compared to what I'm used to when I have like an OBSO or an OESO.
Yeah.
So I was like. Yeah, no. I mean, it's a no.
We were surprised that those were the O's,
and they were they ranked like even in the rank of like the 10 recipes, they were definitely toward the bottom.
Well, somebody's some barrels got to be at the bottom, some's got to be at the top.
Well, and also, the crazy thing about your palate is it's always affected by why you just drank. So if you had drank that first, it might have been a magical pour, but because you drank it after maybe like a K that was very, very spicy, it just doesn't drink as well. And that's always why I had to pick. Some people are like, will always go in order, but I'm a big fan of kind of going all over the place. Starting, if I go in order one way, the next time I go through the lineup, I want to go through it backwards or mixing around, because you can get a little bit biased and your palate can get affected by what you just drank previously.
Okay, so when you say you jump around, like for me, I jump around. I think you do too, Carter, but it's based on nose. Because I'll nose first, and then I'll kind of go.
Yeah.
But I also think it's like different people have strengths. Like I would say my nose, if I'm nosing with Carter, I'll pick up similar notes, but he'll have them much more pronounced. He'll pick up those notes earlier, whereas I may pick up more refined notes on the palate and finish. And so you guys may... Hey, the nose is most important to me. For me, I'd rather have the best finish with a average nose rather than a great nose with a short finish.
No, and I agree with you. I'm just saying it's a starting point for me.
Yeah.
Because I'll go, if it's an underwhelming nose, to your point, I might want to start with that one, thinking it's going to be maybe lower proof or something like that, versus starting with what I might think is a higher proof.
Well, what I always do is and my process is I like have a nose winner, and then I have a palate finish winner, and I try and like kind of line them up. Like what really like, you get it down to like the top 3 of each, and then you just kind of go from there. And then it's just a feel.
Yeah, you got to kick out the slouches first, and then focus on the shining stars.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so limited editions once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's fall with the allocation season, or is it different?
I mean, with COVID, everything's kind of delayed, so with COVID, supply chain shortages.
But I mean, in a normal year, we think allocation starts sometime, early November, and is when do you expect it, at least somewhere between November and the end of the year it comes out?
Early fall.
Oh,
I was going to say early. Yeah, a little bit earlier than the Buffalo
October.
Trace
Different timing than what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my last question as we close out the show. I have an opinion on this. So,
well, you can't ask another question after this.
Okay, we won't.
All right.
Rare breed, kind of every so many years you see them kind of changing the batch, and the proof will change a little bit, 112.2, 109, whatever, and it's 116.8, and there's rumblings that they're getting ready to come out with a new version of it that's going to be around 120. Yeah, so they're due. I'm of the opinion that I understand that Small Batch Select has 6 recipes, and it's the same 6 recipes every time. But I'm hoping that there will become a period of time where he goes, time to change it up.
Well, I mean, you got to think also, Wild Turkey, what you're comparing to is just one mash bill. It's just different proof.
But this is just one mash bill, too. It's the same 6 recipes every time.
Well, I mean, technically, yes, but it's a blend. I mean,
well, there could be different barrels into.
Yeah, but you're comparing high rye, low rye.
I'm not trying to compare them like 1-to-1. I'm just saying as an example.
Yeah, I think you're saying the finished product is essentially.
Instead of these 6 recipes, how about playing with, let's take these 2 out and add 2 more?
That's what the Small Batch Limited Edition is.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, I know it is, but it's not as good. I'm not going to.
This is not accessible.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I'm not going to get that ever. So.
It would be.
I'm talking about when I go to the store,
Well, there's one right there.
Can I keep that?
It's not mine.
Oh.
Is that mine?
Oh, is that yours?
Yeah.
Because I go to the store, my favorite pour probably is the Small Batch Select. And I do like it. But
it's a great quality pour.
And I'm hoping that, the nerd in me goes, I like this, but I would like it to maybe down the road, let's change it up a little bit. Let's see what else.
I get what you're saying. So, like, if you tweaked it very small, because they prove it to 104 every time.
Yep.
So you could say, hey, you can continue to do the same 6 recipes, pull from the same side of the warehouse, et cetera, but just do batch proof. That would be one thing where you would say, hey, each year it might go from 104 to 114.
That would be good.
And there would also be similar to like ECBP, where it's not a single barrel product, but you have 4 releases, like
3 releases.
Yeah.
right. And so one thing, and,
I like that
And
idea
if somebody acts upon us at Four Roses, I definitely want my royalties. But I think that's something that the
like
enthusiast and the nerd and all of us would be like, I can't wait to look forward to the next release of Small Batch Select because it's going to be different than the previous batch.
And I think
Agreed.
in the bourbon world today, the majority of people who are into bourbon think that way.
Correct.
Not like our old,
because they want to do comparisons.
Our grandpas used to be, I want my product and I don't want it to change. We're
Yeah.
no
I want
longer
it to
in that
taste
world.
the same every time.
You do?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm going along with you. That's
Yeah.
So I
that's
think the
the
nerds in
mentality.
us go, I'm excited to go.
Yeah.
What's going to be
from
different?
from a business standpoint,
I get it.
they
I get
they
it.
need consistency is king.
Yeah.
I totally
and that's
get it.
and that's why they blend, and that's why
Well, variation could also be king because it could drive people to seek out new releases.
That's what I
As
think.
opposed to the consistency, which says, if I have a bottle, I don't need another one.
But I also don't know how much of their market is here versus still in Europe and Asia.
Well, but more so than that, where they're really making their money is on premise.
Okay.
So, and that's every distillery. Like that's if you're on premise, that's where you're making your money. So
Okay.
they need, let's say they're using a like Small Batch Select for a cocktail. They need a cocktail to taste the same every time they make it with Small Batch Select. They don't need you to change up the recipe on Small Batch Select and you make that same cocktail and it tastes different.
I want them to use
the
small
masses.
batch for the cocktails and leave my small batch select to be changed up.
for sure.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just being.
I mean, okay, so
I would enjoy that change.
I would too.
All the nerds would.
Yeah.
I would too, but based on the business idea, consistency. You've got to go
And I
out
get that.
sell a consistent product.
Wild Turkey 101. Get it. It's consistent every.
But I like that the ECBP type comparison.
I do like that a lot.
because it's consistent for that quarter.
I mean, you should. This is my comparison.
Oh, okay. Humble brag.
No, it's a good idea, but anyway, yeah.
All right. I don't have any more questions. I do, but I'm not allowed to ask them, so we're done.
Yeah, I think it's dinner time.
It is dinner time.
Rob, thank you for having us out, man. It's been a
Guys.
very
Thank
enjoyable
you.
evening.
Yeah, thanks.
No, I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun talking about this because
This is just part 1, part 2, forthcoming.
I like the way you think, Leo.
Heck
Yeah. Definitely back for more Four Roses, but I think
This will be a series.
I think we might be able to come up with some other topics too. Whether it's I know nothing about tequila and mezcal, but I would like to
I'd like
kind
to do one of
of
those.
get into that. And
Talking to the right
We
people.
could
we've
bring
done
a
some
lot
rum
of-
episodes. We've
lot
done
of
some
good
other
barrels.
spirits. That's a spirit I want to do,
Yeah.
but haven't done yet.
Oh,
so
plus
I,
agave. I mean,
I didn't know you two guys were into that as well. I knew you were big.
well,
Four
thanks to
Roses.
Luis.
Yeah, I'm a big agave. That was my first love in spirits.
didn't know that. I heard you say that earlier,
Mezcal
yeah.
and tequila.
So
and
there's a
Sotol.
future episode coming.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Start out with some ranch waters.
Heck yeah.
Well, thanks guys for coming on. Had a lot of fun with that
Welcome.
conversation.
Thank you for having
Cheers.
us.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.
And drink Four Roses.
That was fun. Sorry to keep you guys waiting.